There is a small jar in my icebox that cost me $5 to fill. The tackle shop 4 miles up the road sells the same thing in a 2-ounce jar for $12, and not one man behind that counter will tell you what is in it. I will tell you what is in it. It is fish oil, and 1 spoonful of a thickener you already have in your kitchen. That is all. That is the whole thing. And the $5 I spent did not buy me 2 ounces. It bought me most of a pint, which is going to last me from April into the fall. And when it runs out, I will make more in about 20 minutes at the kitchen table. I have watched men stand at that shelf and turn those little jars over looking for the ingredients. And there are never any ingredients printed on them. There is a picture of a base, a word like formula, and a price. That is not an accident. There is nothing in that jar that would impress you written down. And everything in it can be bought at a grocery store for the price of a loaf of bread. I learned this from my grandmother, and she was not thinking about fish when she taught it to me. She was thinking about waste. In that house, nothing went down the drain that had any use left in it, and that included the oil in the bottom of a tin of sardines. I must have been 7 or 8 years old the first time she caught me pouring one out over the sink, and she took the tin out of my hand, and she said, "That is the best part." She kept a jar for it on the windowsill. I did not understand what she meant for another 10 years. Today, I am going to show you what is actually in a commercial attractant. How to make a better one for $5, how to make it stick to your lure instead of washing off in 4 seconds, which is the whole problem nobody talks about, and exactly where to put it on. And I am going to tell you the part that should sit uneasy with you, which is that none of this is secret. There is no lost knowledge here. It is written in extension bulletins and in old commercial fishing manuals, and it has been for 80 years. The tackle trade simply had no reason to bring it up. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will never pay $12 for 2 ounces of anything again. The first thing you have to understand is what a fish is actually smelling, because it is not what the picture on the jar suggests. A fish does not smell the way you do. You smell things carried in air. A fish smells things dissolved in water, and the 2 things it is built to find are amino acids and fatty acids. Those are the 2 signatures of flesh. Amino acids are what protein comes apart into. Fatty acids are what fat comes apart into. Put either of them in the water in a very small quantity, and a fish that feeds by scent will turn and work toward it. And the amounts we are talking about are so small, I do not have a good way to describe them. Parts per billion, a drop in a swimming pool. Now, what is the richest, cheapest source of both of those things on Earth? Oily forage fish. Sardines. Mackerel. Herring. Menhaden, which the commercial boats have been rendering for oil since before my grandfather was born. That is the base of nearly every scent product on that shelf. Fish oil. Some kind of thickener to hold it together. Sometimes a little salt. Sometimes an anise or garlic flavor on top of it, because it sells better when it smells like something to the man buying it. And here is the piece I want you to sit with. A 4-ounce tin of sardines packed in oil costs about $1.40. There is a good tablespoon or better of oil in the bottom of it, and every bit of that oil came out of an oily fish, which is the exact thing the $12 jar is made from. You are being sold the drippings of your own lunch at a markup that would embarrass a horse trader. So let us make some. Here is your $5, and I am going to be honest about every penny of it. 3 tins of sardines or mackerel packed in oil, not in water, not in tomato sauce, not in mustard. In oil. About $4.20 for the 3. 1 packet of plain unflavored gelatin from the baking aisle, and a box of 4 runs $1.25, so call it 30 cents for the one you use, and a jar with a tight lid, which you already have. That is under $5. Step 1 is getting the oil, and there are 2 ways to do it depending on whether you want the fish for supper. If you want the fish, open the tin, hold the lid down with your thumb, and pour every drop of the oil off into a jar. Then eat the sardines. That is the whole of it, and my grandmother would have no patience with any other approach. If you do not want the fish, you can get considerably more. Dump the entire contents of the tin, fish and all, into a small pot with a 1/4 cup of water. Put it on the lowest heat you have, and let it sit for 15 or 20 minutes. Do not boil it. You are not cooking. You are just warming the flesh enough to let go of what it is holding. Then pour the whole business through a coffee filter or a piece of cloth set in a strainer and let it drip into a jar. Squeeze the last of it out. What comes through is a cloudy oil with a little water in it. Set that jar in the icebox for a couple of hours. The water sinks. The oil rises and firms up, and you spoon the oil off the top clean. 3 tins done that way will give you a good 1/2 cup of oil, and I will say plainly that your kitchen will smell like a cannery for an hour. Open a window. My wife has opinions about this operation, and I have learned to do it when she is out at her sister's. Step 2 is making it stick, and this is where the $12 jar earns its money. And it is the one thing most folks never work out on their own. Here is the problem. If you take plain oil and wipe it on a lure and cast it, it is gone. Oil and water do not hold on to each other. It sheets off the moment the lure hits. It goes to the surface, and 4 seconds later, your lure is bare, and you are fishing a piece of painted metal that smells like nothing. Every man who has ever tried a homemade scent and decided it did not work has run into exactly this, and blamed the oil. The oil was fine. It just left. Now, before I give you the fix, do me one small favor. If this is landing for you so far, tap the like button, and if you have not subscribed yet, take 3 seconds and do that too, and switch the bell on so the next one finds you when it comes out. That is the only thing I will ask you for today. All right, back to the jar. What you need is body. You need that oil held in something that clings to the lure and gives it up slowly over a few minutes instead of all at once in the first second. That is the entire job of the thickener in the store jar. And here is how you do it for 30 cents. Take 2 tablespoons of cool water in a cup and sprinkle 1 packet of plain gelatin over the top of it. Do not stir it yet. Let it sit 5 minutes and go soft, and it will look like wet sand. Then set the cup in a bowl of hot tap water and stir until it turns clear and runs like syrup. Now pour in your oil, a little at a time, whisking hard with a fork the whole while. It will go cloudy and thick, like cream. Pour that into your jar, put the lid on, and set it in the icebox overnight. What you take out in the morning is a soft paste about the consistency of lard. Scoop a little on your finger and it stays there. Smear it on a lure and it stays there too. And in the water it does not vanish. It wastes away slowly, which is exactly what you want. 2 things to know about it. It will separate a bit over a few weeks, and that is normal, not spoilage. Stir it with a stick, and it comes back. And if you would rather skip the gelatin altogether, you can make a rougher version by working your oil into fine cornmeal or dry breadcrumb a spoonful at a time until it makes a stiff paste. It does not cling as well, and it does not last as long in the water, but it costs nothing, and it will still beat plain oil by a wide margin. If you want to add anise, add a 1/4 teaspoon of the extract to the batch while you are whisking. Anise is not a gimmick. It has been used on bait for a very long time, and there are commercial products built on it. What I would say honestly is that on catfish and carp, I cannot tell you it improves on plain fish oil, and I use it mostly because it cuts the smell on my hands. Take that for what it is worth. Now, step 3, and this is the one everybody skips, and it is worth more than the first 2 put together. Step 3 is how you put it on, and almost every man does this wrong. Do not coat the whole lure. I know that is the instinct. You have a jar of something that works, and you want to bury the lure in it. What happens when you do that is the first cast strips most of it. Because the water is scouring every exposed surface, and you have used a third of your jar for 4 minutes of scent. Put it where the water cannot get at it directly. On a soft plastic, work a little into the ribs and the tail folds, and the hook slot, not the smooth back. On a hard lure with a rattle chamber, push a dab into the hole. On a crankbait, put it on the belly right in front of the hook hanger, in the shadow of the lip where the flow goes around it instead of over it. On a jig, work it up into the skirt where the strands hold it. On a bait hook, a smear on the shank under your bait, not on the bait itself. In every case, you are looking for a pocket, a crevice, a sheltered spot, because a sheltered spot releases for 20 minutes and an exposed spot releases for 20 seconds. Then reapply. I do it about every dozen casts, and more often than that early in the evening when the fish are moving. It takes 4 seconds, and you do it while you are looking at the water anyway. Now, the last piece of step 3 is the part that will do the most for you. And before I hand it over, if you are still sitting here with me, hit that like button and make certain you are subscribed with the bell switched on. It takes 3 seconds, and it is the only reason a fellow talking about a tin of sardines ever gets put in front of anybody. So here it is. If you are still fishing, not casting, put a scent slick out. Take a scrap of old stocking or a bit of mesh onion bag, put a spoonful of your paste in it, tie it off, and hang it in the water on a length of line where the current or the wind drift will carry it past your baits. Not on your line. Off the side of the boat, off the dock post, tied to a branch, up current of where you are fishing. What you have made is a slow feed of scent moving through your water all evening, doing the work of pulling fish toward you while you sit there. 1 spoonful, all evening. That is where the pint really pays for itself, and I have never once seen a man on a bank do it. Now for the honest part, because I have no interest in selling you something I have to shade the truth about. And there are 4 things you need to hear. The first, and this is the big one, and it goes against the whole spirit of every attractant advertisement ever printed. Scent does not call fish from across the lake. It cannot. The plume goes where the water goes, it thins fast, and the realistic reach of a smear on a lure is yards, not hundreds of yards. What scent actually does is change what happens after a fish has already found your offering. It makes a fish take it deeper. It makes a fish hold on a half second longer, and that is the half second where you set the hook instead of missing. It keeps a fish from spitting a piece of plastic that tastes like plastic. That is a real advantage on a slow day, and it is worth every minute of the 20 you spend making the jar. But it is not a spell, and any man who tells you it is a spell is standing next to a cash register. The second is that a rancid batch is worse than nothing. Fish oil goes off, and oxidized oil is a repellent, not an attractant, which means the $12 jar that has been sitting on a hot shelf under a window since 2 summers ago may well be doing you harm. Make small batches. Keep yours in the icebox, keep it in a cooler on the boat, and when a batch smells sharp and paint-like rather than rich and fishy, throw it out and make another. That is 30 cents, not $12. The third is the law and the water. Some states and some waters have rules about chumming, about scent attractants, about introducing any substance to the water, and trout waters in particular are often stricter than you would guess. Look it up on your state wildlife agency page before you go. It takes 4 minutes. And whatever the rules say, do not pour loose oil on the water. A slick in a mesh bag that you carry home is a different animal from a quart of oil dumped off a dock, and I would not want anybody watching this doing the second thing. And the fourth is that it does not help every fish equally. It is very good on catfish, on carp, on bass and walleye working soft plastics, on panfish. It does much less for a pike or a trout in fast, clear water, because those fish run on their eyes and hit before scent is much involved. Use the tool that fits the fish. Now, why has nobody told you any of this? Think about the arithmetic on that shelf. 2 ounces of oil and thickener sells for $12, which is $6 an ounce for something that costs pennies to put in there. There is no other product in that store with a margin like it, and none so easy to imitate at home. Both of those things are true at once, and only one of them is on the label. I do not believe anyone held a meeting about this. I want to be clear, because I have no use for that sort of thinking. It is quieter than a conspiracy, and to my mind, worse. Every person along the line simply has no reason to bring it up. The magazine does not, because the magazine sells its pages to the company. The fellow on the television does not, because the company pays him. The young man behind the counter does not, because he learned everything he knows from a catalog and a sales representative. Nobody has to coordinate a thing. They only have to stay quiet, and they have stayed quiet for 60 years. We kept it, because we had to. When there is nothing to spend, you learn what is still in the tin after supper. That knowledge never survived in books. It survived on windowsills. My great-uncle ran a trot line on the river for 40 years, and he was the best fisherman I have ever known. And he kept a coffee tin of rendered oil under the seat of his boat that would clear a room. I asked him once, when I was 15 and full of myself, whether the oil was what made him better than everybody else. He laughed at me a while. Then he said, "No, the oil is not a spell. It is a letter of introduction." He said, "You cannot make a fish hungry, and no man ever has. All you can do is be easy to say yes to." And then he said the part I kept, which was, everything in that shop is somebody selling you a shortcut around paying attention. And there is no such road. I have thought about that most of my life since, and I do not believe he was only talking about fishing. If any of that was worth your evening, do the 3 small things that help. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, turn the bell on. That is all of it. And it is what puts this in front of the next fellow standing at that shelf with a $12 jar in his hand. So here is what I want you to do. This week, buy 3 tins of sardines in oil. Pour off the oil or warm the tin with a splash of water and strain it for more. Bloom 1 packet of plain gelatin in 2 tablespoons of water, melt it over hot water, and whisk your oil into it. Jar it. Chill it overnight. Then, on the water, put it in the crevices and not on the smooth surfaces. Freshen it every dozen casts and hang a spoonful in a mesh scrap-up current of where you sit. Then come back and tell me in the comments what state you are in, what water you fished, what you used it on, and whether you noticed the difference in fish holding on longer. That last one is what I most want to hear about. I read every one of them. And the reports folks send back are the reason I keep doing this. Next time, I am going to show you the 1 knot my grandfather tied for everything he ever caught, which takes 4 seconds, holds better than what is printed on the side of your line spool, and which almost nobody under 60 has been taught. Most of what you lose right there at the hook, and it is not the line's fault. Until then, keep your line wet. Keep your oil cold, and remember that the people who fed their families off this water with their hands knew things we are only just beginning to remember.